This screencast is going to discuss the concept of L.C.M. So what does that mean? What does L.C.M. stand for? It stands for least common multiple. So let's go ahead and break this apart. So let's start with the first word, least. What's another word for least? What's a synonym for least? Well, we could use the word smallest. Okay, so we first of all know that we're looking for a small something. And then let's skip over the word common and go down to multiple. Remember, a multiple is just a product of two numbers. So remember, we're counting by numbers. So this is going to be a number. And then let's look at that middle word, common. The word common means that we are sharing something. So if we have something in common, we share a common characteristic, we share a common goal, something along those lines. So in this case, when we're looking for the least common multiple, we are looking for the smallest number that two or more numbers share. So the second question that we're going to answer in the rest of this video is, how do I find the least common multiple of two or more numbers? So let's go ahead and take a look at some examples. So the first example says, find the least common multiple of 3 and 8. Once again, you're going to notice that we're comparing two or more numbers in each of these examples. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to list out multiples of 3 and multiples of 8. Remember that my first multiple is always the number itself. A given rule for when you're trying to find LCM or least common multiple is you normally want to list the first 5 to 7 multiples of each number. Now in this case, we're looking at a smaller number and we're looking at a bigger number. So chances are we're going to need to list more multiples for the number 3 than we would for the number 8. But just to be safe, we're going to list the first 5 multiples for each number to start. So I'm going to count by threes. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 8, 16, 24, 32, 40. So far I'm comparing my list. I don't have anything in common yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add maybe like 2 or 3 more to 3 and see if I have anything in common. So if I add 3 to 15, I get to 18. If I add 3 more, I get to 21. If I add 3 more, I get to 24. I'm going to go ahead and look at my two lists, and right now I can see that I have 24 in common with my 3 and my 8. So in this particular example, my least common multiple is going to be 24, because that is the smallest number that 3 and 8 have in common. So my LCM between 3 and 8 would be 24. Let's take a look at another example. And in this example, we're going to see that we're actually comparing 3 numbers. So we're comparing 3, 4, and 6. So we have to find the least common multiple between 3, 4, and 6. So those 3 numbers have to share a common multiple. So let's go ahead and list out the first 5 multiples. So pause your video, list out the first 5 multiples of 3, 4, and 6, and then we'll see if we've come up with anything. So I have my first 5 multiples listed out for 3, 4, and 6. So if I go through and compare, let's see, I don't have a common 3. I have a 6, but that's only in 2 of them, so that's not going to work. I have a 12 in all 3, and that looks like it's about it in the current list that I have. So because we're looking for the least or the smallest, my LCM is going to be the number 12. So notice that when you're looking at 3 numbers, it's not changing the process of finding multiples or finding the least common multiple. You're still listing out the first 5 to 7 multiples of each number and then comparing your list to find the least or the smallest number that they have in common. So why don't you guys go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to try and find the least common multiple of 5 and 7. Remember our rule, list the first 5 multiples of each number and then go through and compare your list to see if you find your LCM. If not, then you might want to add 3 to 4 more multiples until you do. So go ahead and pause the video, see what you come up with, and then check your answer. So if you go ahead and take a look at my list, I actually did have to go a little bit further than the first 5 multiples, especially with the number 5. But when I go through and I compare my list, I see that my LCM between 5 and 7 is going to be the number 35. All right, one final example that I would like you once again to try on your own. So you're going to list the multiples of 6 and 9. and then compare your list to find your LCM. So in this particular example, the least common multiple, or the smallest number that 6 and 9 have in common, is 36. So a few final notes or important things to remember. Number 1, make sure you're listing 5 to 7 multiples for each number to start looking for the LCM. Number 2, if you don't find the LCM right away, keep listing multiples for each number until you do. Number 3, make sure you are listing the correct multiples for each number. So if you're not counting correctly, chances are you're not going to find the right common multiple or least common multiple, so make sure that you're doing the steps correctly. And the final thing that you need to remember is that you are comparing 2 or more numbers in order to find the least common multiple. So you have to compare 2 or more numbers in order to find that least common multiple.